The red dust swirled outside the dome, obscuring Zoe's view of the barren Martian landscape. She sighed and turned away from the window, her eyes scanning the cramped living quarters she shared with her parents and younger brother. The same dull metal walls, the same recycled air, the same struggle for survival they'd endured for the past 3 years since arriving on Mars. AT-16, Zoe had spent nearly a fifth of her life on this desolate planet. She tried to remember what life had been like back on Earth: blue skies, green grass, fresh air. But those memories grew hazier with each passing day. This was her reality now, eking out an existence in humanity's first extraterrestrial colony. A chime from her wrist computer interrupted her brooding. It was time for her shift in the hydroponics bay. With another sigh, Zoe pulled on her protective suit and stepped into the airlock. A blast of stale air hit her as the inner door sealed shut. Moments later, she was trudging across the dusty ground toward the large domed structure that housed the colony's precious food supply. Inside the hydroponics bay, row after row of plants grew under artificial light. The air was thick with humidity and the earthy smell of vegetation. Zoe made her way to her assigned section and began checking the nutrient levels and inspecting the plants for any signs of disease. It was monotonous work, but vital for their survival. As she worked, Zoe's mind wandered. She thought about her classmates back on Earth, now in their final year of high school. They were probably worried about college applications and prom dates. Meanwhile, Zoe's biggest concern was whether the latest dust storm had damaged any of the solar panels they relied on for power. A sudden commotion near the entrance to the hydroponics bay snapped Zoe out of her reverie. She looked up to see several of the colony's leaders hurrying in, their faces a mix of excitement and apprehension. Everyone, stop what you're doing, Colony Director Chen announced. We need you all in the main hall immediately. This is not a drill. Zoe's heart began to race. Had something catastrophic happened? Was the colony in danger? She quickly finished what she was doing and joined the stream of confused workers heading for the exit. In the main hall, an air of nervous anticipation filled the room as colonists filed in. Zoe spotted her parents and brother and made her way over to them. Do you know what's going on? She asked. Her father shook his head. No idea. But it must be big for them to call everyone together like this. Director Chen stepped up to the podium at the front of the room, his face grave. Colonists, I have an unprecedented announcement to make. Less than an hour ago, we detected an unidentified object entering Mars orbit. A collective gasp went up from the crowd. Zoe felt her mother's hand tighten around hers. Initial scans indicated is not of human origin. Chen continued. We are dealing with a potential first contact scenario. The room erupted in shocked whispers. Zoe's mind reeled. Aliens? Here, it seemed impossible. I know this is a lot to take in, Chen said, raising his hands for quiet, but I need everyone to remain calm. We have protocols in place for this situation, and we will follow them to the letter. For now, I ask that you all return to your quarters and await further instructions. As the colonists filed out of the hall, in a daze, Zoe turned to her parents. What do you think this means? She asked. Her mother shook her head, looking shell-shocked. I don't know, honey. But whatever happens, we'll face it together. Back in their quarters, Zoe's family huddled around the small view screen, watching for updates. An hour crawled by, with no new information. Then, too, the suspense was unbearable. Suddenly, the screen lit up with an incoming transmission. Director Chen's face appeared, looking both awestruck and cautious. Colonists, I have an update on our situation, he began. The unidentified object has landed approximately 10 kilometers from the colony. We have established visual contact, and I can now confirm that we are indeed dealing with an extraterrestrial species. Chen paused, letting the magnitude of his words sink in. They appear to be peaceful and have requested a meeting with colony representatives. I will be leading a small delegation to make first contact. Please remain in your quarters until we return with more information. As the transmission ended, Zoe turned to her family, her eyes wide with wonder and a hint of fear. Can you believe it? She breathed. Real aliens, right here on Mars. Her younger brother Alex bounced excitedly on the couch. Do you think they'll let us meet them? I want to see what they look like. Their father placed a calming hand on Alex's shoulder. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We don't know anything about these beings or why they're here. We need to be cautious. Zoe nodded. but she couldn't help feeling a thrill of excitement beneath her apprehension. After years of monotony and struggle on Mars, something extraordinary was finally happening. The hours crept by as they waited for news. Zoe tried to distract herself by reading, but she couldn't focus on the words. Her mind kept conjuring up images of what the aliens might look like. Were they humanoid? Insectoid? Something completely beyond her imagination? Finally, after what felt like an eternity, another transmission came through. This time, it wasn't just Director Chen on the screen. Standing beside him was a being unlike anything Zoe had ever seen. The alien was tall and slender, with iridescent skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. Its head was elongated, with large, almond-shaped eyes that were a deep, mesmerizing purple. Instead of a mouth, it had what looked like a small speaker embedded in its throat. Colonist Chen began, his voice filled with awe. "I'd like to introduce you to Zara, representative of the Lumina people." The alien Zara inclined its head in a gesture of greeting. When it spoke, the voice that emanated from the speaker in its throat was melodious and gender-neutral. "Greetings, people of Earth," Zara said. "We come in peace and with an offer of friendship." Over the next hour, Chen and Zara explained the situation. The Lumina were an advanced, spacefaring civilization that had been observing humanity's progress for centuries. They had chosen this moment to make contact because they believed humanity had reached a crucial juncture in its development. "Your species stands at a crossroads," Zara explained. "Your first extraterrestrial colony struggles to survive, yet you persevere. We admire your resilience and your potential. We wish to help you thrive, not just on Mars, but throughout the galaxy." Zoe listened in amazement as Zara outlined the Lumina's offer. They would provide the Mars colony with advanced technology, more efficient power generation, better environmental systems, even gravity manipulation to make life on Mars more Earth-like. In return, they asked only for friendship and cultural exchange. It seemed too good to be true. Zoe's parents exchanged skeptical glances, and she could sense similar reactions from other colonists visible on the group transmission. Director Chen addressed these unspoken concerns. "I know this is overwhelming, and you all have many questions. The Lumina have agreed to stay and give us time to discuss their offer as a community. We will be holding a colony-wide meeting tomorrow to address all concerns and decide how to proceed." As the transmission ended, Zoe's family sat in stunned silence for several moments. "Well," her father finally said, "I guess life on Mars just got a lot more interesting." Zoe nodded, her mind racing with the possibilities. If the Lumina were genuine in their offer, it could change everything. No more constant struggle for survival, no more rationing every resource. They could actually thrive here on Mars. But a small part of her also felt a twinge of sadness. The hard-won skills and resilience they developed over the past 3 years, would those become obsolete? And what would this mean for their relationship with Earth? The next day, the entire colony gathered in the main hall. The atmosphere crackled with a mix of excitement, hope, and apprehension. Director Chen took the podium, flanked by Zara and 2 other Lumina. "Before we open the floor for questions," Chen began, "Zara has asked to address you all directly." The alien stepped forward, its iridescent skin catching the light in mesmerizing patterns. "People of Mars," Zara's melodious voice rang out, "we understand your caution. In your position, we too would be wary of an offer that seems too good to be true. So let me be clear, our offer comes with no hidden agenda. We genuinely wish to help your species flourish." Zara went on to explain that the Lumina believed in fostering the development of younger species, not exploiting them. They had made similar offers to other developing civilizations across the galaxy, forming a network of peaceful, cooperative worlds. But Zara continued, and Zoe sensed a shift in the alien's tone. "We must also be honest about the challenges we face. Our offer of assistance comes at a time when we too are in need." A murmur ran through the crowd. Zoe leaned forward, intrigued. "There is another species in our galaxy," Zara explained, "one that does not share our philosophy of peaceful cooperation. They are known as the Vorax, and they seek only to conquer and consume. For millennia, we have managed to keep them at bay, but they grow stronger and more aggressive with each passing year." The alien's large purple eyes scanned the room, seeming to make contact with each person present. "We do not ask you to fight our battles for us, but we do hope that, in time, as your civilization grows and thrives with our assistance, you might stand with us against this threat, not just for our sake, but for all peaceful species in the galaxy." The room erupted in a cacophony of voices, as colonists began to discuss this new information. Zoe's mind was reeling. Aliens were real, and they wanted to help humanity. But there were also hostile aliens out there, posing a threat to the entire galaxy. It was like something out of one of the science fiction stories she used to read back on Earth. Director Chen called for order, and the room gradually quieted. "I know this is a lot to process," he said. "We'll now open the floor for questions. Please remember to be respectful. The Lumina are our guests." Hands shot up all around the room. Chen pointed to a woman in the front row, Dr. Emerson, the colony's chief scientist. "Thank you, Director Doctor," Emerson said, then turned to address Zara. "You mentioned providing us with advanced technology. Can you be more specific about what this entails, and how can we be sure this technology won't have unforeseen negative consequences for our colony or our species as a whole?" Zara nodded, a gesture they seemed to have adopted from observing humans. "An excellent question. The technology we offer includes advanced energy production methods that will eliminate your reliance on solar power. We can provide atmospheric processors that will allow you to begin terraforming Mars on a small scale, creating pockets of breathable air outside your domes. We also have medical technology that can cure most diseases and extend human lifespans." The alien paused, seeming to consider the second part of the question carefully. "As for unforeseen consequences, we have centuries of experience introducing advanced technology to developing species. We will work closely with your scientists and leaders to implement these technologies gradually, monitoring for any negative impacts. We have no desire to overwhelm or destabilize your society." More hands went up, and Chen called on a weathered-looking man Zoe recognized as one of the agricultural specialists. "What about Earth?" he asked. "Will they be receiving this technology too? And how do you think they'll react to learning about your existence?" This time, Director Chen fielded the question. "We've been in constant communication with Earth since the Lumina arrived. They're processing the information. As for the technology, that will be a decision for global leaders to make. Our focus right now is on the immediate needs of our colony." The questions continued for hours. The colonists wanted to know everything: what the Lumina ate, how their society was structured, how they had achieved interstellar travel. Zara and the other aliens answered patiently, their responses only sparking more curiosity. As the meeting wore on, Zoe found her initial apprehension giving way to excitement. Yes, there were risks and unknowns, but the potential benefits were staggering. They had come to Mars to push the boundaries of human achievement. Wasn't this the ultimate expression of that goal? Finally, Director Chen called for an end to the questions. "We've all been given a lot to think about," he said. "Tomorrow we'll hold a colony-wide vote on whether to accept the Lumina's offer. I urge you all to consider carefully what we've learned today. This decision will shape not just the future of our colony, but potentially the future of humanity." As the colonists filed out of the hall, the air was buzzing with excited conversations. Zoe overheard snippets as she walked with her family. "Can you imagine being able to breathe Martian air? But what about these Vorax? Are we painting a target on our backs? It's a trick." "Has to be. No one's that altruistic." Back in their quarters, Zoe's family sat down to discuss what they'd learned. Her father looked troubled. "I don't like the idea of becoming dependent on alien technology," he said. "We came here to prove humanity could stand on its own 2 feet. Her mother nodded in agreement. "And this business with the Vorax? Are we ready to potentially make an enemy of an aggressive alien species?" "But think of the possibilities," Zoe countered, unable to contain her enthusiasm. "We're struggling just to survive here. With the Lumina's help, we could actually start to build a real civilization on Mars. Isn't that why we came here in the first place?" Alex piped up. "Yeah, and they seem really nice. I bet we could learn so much from them." Their parents exchanged a look. "We'll sleep on it," their mother said. "Tomorrow's vote is important. We need to be sure we're making the right choice." That night, Zoe found it hard to sleep. Her mind was racing with visions of what Mars could become with the Lumina's help. Lush gardens under the open Martian sky, thriving cities with buildings that stretched towards the stars, spaceships embarking on missions to explore the far reaches of the solar system and beyond. But she also couldn't shake a tiny niggle of doubt. What if her parents were right? What if accepting the Lumina's help somehow compromised their independence, their very humanity? The next morning, the colony gathered once again in the main hall. The atmosphere was tense with anticipation. Director Chen took the podium, his face solemn. "Colonists," he began. "Over the past 2 days, we've been presented with an opportunity unlike any in human history. The decision we make today will have far-reaching consequences. Not just for us, but for all of humanity. I trust that you've all considered this choice carefully. It's time to cast your votes." Zoe looked down at the voting interface on her wrist computer. A simple binary choice glowed on the screen: accept or reject. She took a deep breath, thinking of everything she'd heard and felt over the past 2 days. Then, decisively, she made her choice. The next few minutes seemed to stretch on forever as the votes were tallied. Finally, Director Chen stepped back up to the podium, his face unreadable. "The results are in," he announced. "By a margin of 78% to 22%, the colony has voted to accept the Lumina's offer." A cheer went up from the crowd. Zoe felt a surge of excitement and relief. They were really doing this. They were taking a leap into a new era for humanity. As the cheering died down, Chen continued, "I've already communicated our decision to the Lumina. They're prepared to begin implementing their technology immediately. But I want to stress to everyone, this is not going to be an overnight transformation. We'll be working closely with the Lumina to introduce these changes gradually and safely." Over the next few weeks, the Mars colony was a hive of activity. Lumina ships arrived, bringing equipment and materials unlike anything Zoe had ever seen. The aliens worked alongside the colonists, patiently explaining each new piece of technology as it was installed. The first major change came in the form of new power generators. Small, sleek devices that the Lumina called zero-point energy extractors were set up around the colony. Within days, they were producing more power than all of the colony's solar panels combined. Next came improvements to their life support systems. The air became fresher, the temperature regulation more precise. Zoe noticed the difference immediately. She felt more energetic, more alive. But the most exciting development was the atmospheric processors. Massive machines were set up outside the colony domes, their purpose to gradually transform the Martian atmosphere into something breathable for humans. It would take years, the Lumina explained, but eventually they would be able to step outside without suits. As the weeks turned into months, Zoe watched in amazement as her world transformed. The hydroponics bay where she had once spent long hours tending to fragile plants was now a lush, thriving garden. New varieties of fruits and vegetables, engineered to thrive in the Martian environment, grew in abundance. The colony expanded rapidly, new domes sprouting up across the landscape. But these weren't the cramped, utilitarian structures Zoe had grown up in. The new buildings were marvels of alien architecture, their graceful curves and shimmering surfaces a stark contrast to the red Martian dust. Zoe's daily life changed dramatically. Instead of the constant struggle for survival, she now found herself with time to pursue interests beyond mere subsistence. The Lumina had brought educational materials covering a vast array of subjects from advanced physics to alien art forms. Zoe threw herself into these studies with enthusiasm, her mind expanding along with her world. But not everyone was thrilled with the changes. Zoe's father, once the colony's top engineer, found himself struggling to understand the new Lumina technology. He spent long hours poring over technical manuals, his face creased with frustration. "I just don't get it," he confessed to Zoe one evening. It's like magic. I can see what it does, but I have no idea how it works." Zoe tried to reassure him. "That's okay, Dad. The Lumina said it would take time for us to fully understand their tech. You'll get there." He smiled weakly. "Maybe. But sometimes I wonder if we've bitten off more than we can chew here." Zoe understood his concerns, but she couldn't share them. Every day brought new wonders, new opportunities. She had never felt more alive, more full of purpose. As the Martian colony flourished, communication with Earth became more frequent. The governments of Earth were still debating how to respond to the Lumina's offer, their discussions mired in politics and age-old rivalries. But individuals on Earth were fascinated by the reports coming from Mars. Applications to join the colony skyrocketed. 6 months after the Lumina's arrival, Zoe stood with her family at the edge of the colony, watching as a new ship descended from the sky. Unlike the utilitarian vessels that had brought them to Mars, this ship was a sleek, silvery craft of Lumina design. It touched down with barely a whisper, its landing struts extending gracefully. As the dust settled, The ship's hatch opened, and the new arrivals began to disembark. There were scientists, engineers, and families with wide-eyed children, all coming to be part of this grand experiment. Among the crowd, Zoe spotted a familiar face, her old friend Elena from back on Earth. They locked eyes, and Elena's face broke into a huge grin. She ran towards Zoe, and the two girls embraced, laughing and crying at the same time. "I can't believe you're here," Zoe exclaimed. "How? When did you decide to come?" Elena's eyes were shining with excitement. "When we started getting reports about what was happening here. Zoe, it sounded like a dream. I knew I had to be part of it. My parents took some convincing, but eventually they agreed." As they chatted, catching up on 3 years of separation, Zoe couldn't help but marvel at how much had changed. Just months ago, she had been resigned to a life of hardship and limitation. Now the future seemed boundless. But even as she reveled in the joy of reunion and the excitement of progress, a small part of Zoe's mind turned to the challenges that lay ahead. The Lumina had been clear about the threat posed by the Vorax. As humanity reached for the stars, were they also moving towards an interstellar conflict? For now, though, Zoe pushed those thoughts aside. There would be time to worry about galactic politics later. Today was for celebration, for embracing old friends and new possibilities. As the Martian sun set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Zoe led Elena on a tour of the colony. They walked through gardens that would have been impossible just months ago, marveled at the elegant new architecture, and watched in awe as the atmospheric processors continued their work of transforming the very air around them. "It's incredible," Elena breathed, her eyes wide as she took it all in. "I knew it would be different, but it's like stepping into the future." Zoe nodded, a surge of pride welling up in her chest. "It is the future," she said, "and we're building it right here." As they walked, Zoe filled Elena in on everything that had happened since the Lumina's arrival. She told her about the initial shock and skepticism, the tense colony-wide vote, and the rapid changes that had followed. Elena listened with rapt attention, occasionally interjecting with questions or exclamations of amazement. "But what are the Lumina really like?" Elena asked as they paused to watch the sun dip below the horizon. "I mean, beyond all the technology and help they're providing, what kind of beings are they?" Zoe considered the question carefully. "They're kind," she said finally, "patient. They never seem to get frustrated, even when we struggle to understand something that's probably incredibly basic to them. And they're curious about us too. They're always asking questions about our culture, our history, our way of thinking." She paused, trying to find the right words to express her feelings. "It's like they see the best in us, the potential of what we could become, and they genuinely want to help us reach that potential." Elena nodded slowly. "That's amazing. But doesn't it make you feel a bit, I don't know, inferior? Like we're children and they're the adults?" It was a thought Zoe had grappled with herself. "Sometimes," she admitted. "But then I remember that we're not so different. They had to start somewhere too, right? They're just further along the path than we are. And they want to help us along that same path." As they continued their tour, Zoe showed Elena the new educational center where colonists could access the vast wealth of knowledge the Lumina had shared. Holographic displays showcased everything from the intricacies of zero-point energy to the history of distant alien civilizations. "This is where I spend most of my free time," Zoe explained. "There's so much to learn, it's almost overwhelming. But in a good way, you know." Elena ran her hand over one of the control panels, her eyes wide with wonder. "I can't wait to dive into all of this. It's like all the mysteries of the universe are right at our fingertips." As they exited the education center, they nearly collided with the Lumina who was entering. Zoe recognized her as Zara, the first Lumina she had ever seen. "Ah, Zoe," Zara's melodious voice greeted them. "And you must be Elena, one of our new arrivals. Welcome to Mars." Elena stammered out a greeting, clearly awestruck at her first close encounter with an alien being. Zoe couldn't help but smile, remembering her own initial reaction. "Zara, I was just showing Elena around," Zoe explained. "She had some questions about the Lumina. Would you mind?" "Of course not," Zara replied, her iridescent skin shimmering in the artificial light. "What would you like to know, Elena?" For the next hour, they sat in the education center as Zara patiently answered Elena's questions. She explained more about Lumina culture, their philosophy of galactic cooperation, and their hopes for humanity's future. "We see such potential in your species," Zara said, her large purple eyes fixed on the two girls. "Your curiosity, your adaptability, your drive to explore and understand. These are qualities we value highly." But as the conversation went on, Zara's tone grew more serious. "However, we must also prepare you for the challenges that lie ahead. The galaxy is vast and wondrous, but it is not without its dangers." Zoe leaned forward, sensing they were about to learn more about the mysterious threat Zara had mentioned in that first meeting. "You mean the Vorax?" he asked. Zara nodded, a gesture that still looked slightly odd coming from her alien form. "Yes, the Vorax are difficult to describe in terms you would understand. They are not evil, as you might conceive of it. They simply have a fundamentally different view of existence." "Different how?" Elena asked, her initial awe giving way to curiosity. Zara seemed to consider her words carefully. "The Vorax believe that the strong have not just the right but the obligation to dominate the weak. They see the diversity of life in the galaxy not as something to be celebrated, but as a buffet from which they can pick and choose." A chill ran down Zoe's spine at these words. "You mean they eat other species?" In a manner of speaking, Zara replied. "They consume not just physically, but culturally and technologically. They believe that by absorbing other species they are improving themselves and the galaxy as a whole." Elena shook her head in disbelief. "That's horrible. How can they think that's okay?" "It is their nature," Zara said simply. "Just as it is our nature to seek cooperation and mutual growth. This is why we have been in conflict with them for so long. Our philosophies are fundamentally incompatible." Zoe's mind was racing. "But why tell us about this? Why involve humanity in this conflict?" Zara's large eyes seemed to bore into Zoe. "Because isolation is no longer an option for your species. By reaching Mars, you have taken your first steps into the galactic community. The Vorax would have found you eventually. We believe it is better for you to be prepared, to have allies." The gravity of the situation began to sink in for Zoe. Their decision to accept the Lumina's help hadn't just been about improving life on Mars. It had been a choice to align themselves in a cosmic conflict they hadn't even known existed. "So what happens now?" Elena asked, her voice small. "Now," Zara said, "we continue to work together. We help you grow, learn, and prepare. The Vorax are not an immediate threat to your system, but they are expanding. In time, you will need to be ready to stand with us and other peaceful species to defend our shared values." As they left the education center, Zoe and Elena walked in silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. The Martian night was clear, stars twinkling brightly in the thin atmosphere. "It's a lot to take in, isn't it?" Zoe finally said. Elena nodded, her face thoughtful. "Yeah, when I decided to come to Mars, I thought I was signing up for an adventure. I never imagined this." Zoe put a comforting hand on her friend's shoulder. "I know, but think about it this way: we're part of something bigger than we ever could have imagined. We're not just colonizing Mars anymore. We're taking humanity's first steps into a galactic community." Elena managed a small smile. "When you put it like that, it does sound pretty amazing." As they continued their walk, Zoe's mind was whirling with possibilities. The challenges ahead were daunting, but the potential was incredible. Humanity, working alongside the Lumina and other alien races, exploring the stars, defending peace and cooperation across the galaxy. It was like something out of the science fiction stories she used to read. But it was real, and she was part of it. Over the next few months, life on Mars continued to evolve at a dizzying pace. The atmospheric processors were making noticeable progress, the sky was taking on a more Earth-like blue tint, and the air pressure was slowly increasing. The Lumina scientists estimated that within a year, they would be able to take their first breaths of Martian air without assistance. The colony continued to expand, with new domes and structures sprouting up across the landscape. But these weren't just habitats and research facilities. There were now parks, sports arenas, and even a theater. It was becoming a true city, a home rather than just a survival outpost. Zoe threw herself into her studies with renewed vigor. The Lumina educational programs were challenging but fascinating, covering everything from advanced physics to xenobiology. She found herself particularly drawn to classes on galactic diplomacy and interspecies communication. If humanity was to take its place among the stars, these skills would be crucial. Elena quickly adapted to life on Mars, her initial awe giving way to a determined curiosity that matched Zoe's own. The two girls often studied together, challenging each other and sharing their insights. But not everyone was adapting so well. Zoe's father continued to struggle with the rapid changes. She often found him late at night, poring over technical manuals with a furrowed brow. "I just can't keep up," he confessed to her one evening. "Every time I think I'm starting to understand this new tech, they introduce something even more advanced. I feel obsolete." Zoe's heart ached for her father. He had always been her hero, the brilliant engineer who could fix anything. Seeing him so discouraged was difficult. "You're not obsolete, Dad," she insisted. "Your experience, your problem-solving skills, those are still valuable. The Lumina keeps saying that it's not just about the technology, it's about how we use it. And for that, we need people like you." He smiled weakly at her words, but Zoe could see the doubt lingering in his eyes. She made a mental note to talk to Zara about this. There had to be a way to help the older generation feel more included in this new era. As the Martian winter approached, bringing with it dust storms that still raged despite the atmospheric changes, the colony received word that a delegation from Earth would be arriving. After months of debate, the governments of Earth had finally reached a decision about the Lumina's offer. The day of the delegation's arrival, the entire colony gathered to greet them. Zoe stood with her family in Elena, watching as the sleek Earth ship descended through the thin Martian atmosphere. As the delegates disembarked, Zoe recognized some of them from news broadcasts: the Secretary General of the United Nations, the US, President, the Chinese Premier, and other world leaders. They looked around in barely concealed awe at what the Mars colony had become. Director Chen stepped forward to greet them, flanked by Zara and several other Lumina. The Earth delegates seemed momentarily taken aback by the aliens' appearance, but quickly composed themselves. The Secretary General was the first to speak. "On behalf of the people of Earth, we come with open minds and hopeful hearts," she announced. "We have seen the incredible progress made here on Mars, and we are ready to embrace this new chapter in human history." A cheer went up from the colonists. After months of uncertainty, it seemed that Earth was finally ready to join them in this grand endeavor. But as Zoe watched the proceedings, she couldn't help but notice the nervous glances some of the Earth delegates were casting at the Lumina. She was reminded that for them, this was all brand new. They hadn't had months to get used to the idea of alien allies. Over the next few days, the Earth delegation toured the colony, marveling at the advances made possible by Lumina technology. Zoe and other young colonists were asked to share their experiences to help the delegates understand what life was like in this new Mars. "It's not just the technology that's different," Zoe explained to a group of wide-eyed Earth officials. "It's the way we think about our place in the universe. We're not just Earthlings anymore. We're part of something much bigger." The officials nodded, but Zoe could see the struggle in their eyes as they tried to wrap their minds around this new reality. Change was never easy, and the change they were facing was monumental. As the delegation's visit drew to a close, a final meeting was called. The Earth leaders, colony officials, and Lumina representatives gathered to discuss the path forward. The Secretary General stood to address the assembly. "After careful consideration, and seeing firsthand the incredible advancements here on Mars, we have decided to accept the Lumina's offer of assistance." A ripple of excitement ran through the room, but the Secretary General held up a hand for silence. "However, we must proceed with caution. The changes we implement on Earth must be gradual to avoid social and economic disruption, and we have concerns about the potential military implications of this alliance." Zara stepped forward, her iridescent skin shimmering under the harsh lights of the meeting room. "We understand your concerns," she said, her melodious voice calm and reassuring. "The Lumina have no desire to disrupt Earth's societies or economies. We propose a gradual implementation plan, tailored to each region's specific needs and capabilities." The Earth leaders listened intently as Zara outlined a strategy for introducing Lumina technology to Earth. It would start with improvements to renewable energy and environmental restoration, addressing the pressing issue of climate change. Medical advancements would be introduced next, focusing initially on curing major diseases. More advanced technologies, like gravity manipulation and faster-than-light travel, would come later, once humanity had time to adapt to the earlier changes. As for the military implications, Zara was direct. "The threat posed by the Vorax is real, but not immediate for your solar system. We do not ask you to fight our battles. We ask only that you be prepared to stand with us and other peaceful species if the need arises. How you choose to do so is entirely up to you." The meeting continued late into the night, with Earth leaders peppering both the Lumina and Mars colony officials with questions. Zoe, observing from the back of the room, was struck by the historical significance of the moment. This was humanity taking its first tentative steps onto the galactic stage. As the meeting concluded, the Secretary General turned to address the Mars colonists. "You have been the pioneers in this new frontier," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "Your courage and adaptability have paved the way for all of humanity. We thank you for your service." In the days that followed, as the Earth delegation prepared to return home, there was a palpable sense of excitement and anticipation in the colony. The decision to accept the Lumina's help would change everything, not just for Mars, but for all of humanity. Zoe found herself reflecting on how far they'd come. Just a year ago, they had been struggling merely to survive on this harsh planet. Now, they were at the forefront of a new age of human development. As she walked with Elena through one of the new park domes, marveling at the lush vegetation that now thrived in Martian soil, Zoe spotted her father. He was deep in conversation with one of the Lumina engineers, gesticulating excitedly as they discussed some technical detail. The sight filled her with hope. Perhaps he had found his place in this new world after all. "What do you think comes next?" Elena asked, pulling Zoe from her thoughts. Zoe looked up at the dome above them, beyond which she could see the rusty Martian sky slowly turning blue. "I think," she said slowly, "that this is just the beginning. We're going to see changes we can't even imagine right now, and we'll be right in the middle of it all." Elena nodded, a mix of excitement and apprehension in her eyes. "It's a big responsibility, isn't it? Being the bridge between Earth and the Lumina, between our past and our future." "It is," Zoe agreed. "But I think we're up for the challenge. We've already proven we can adapt to life on Mars. Now we just need to help the rest of humanity make that same leap." As they continued their walk, Zoe's mind wandered to the future. What would Earth look like in 10 years? In 50? Would there be Lumina technology in every home? Would humans be traveling to other star systems? And what of the Vorax? Would humanity one day find itself fighting alongside alien allies to defend their shared values? These were big questions with no easy answers. But Zoe felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. They had come to Mars to push the boundaries of human achievement, and now those boundaries were expanding beyond anything they could have imagined. The next few months saw a flurry of activity, as the Mars colony prepared for its new role as a hub of human-Lumina cooperation. New facilities were constructed to house Earth scientists and diplomats who would be coming to study Lumina technology and culture. The educational programs were expanded, with a focus on preparing the younger generation for life in a galactic community. Zoe found herself increasingly drawn to the field of xenodiplomacy. She spent hours studying Lumina culture and history, as well as learning about other alien species they had encountered. The more she learned, the more she realized how vast and complex the galaxy truly was. One day, as she was leaving a particularly fascinating lecture on interspecies communication, Zoe was approached by Zara. "You show great aptitude for these studies," the Lumina said, her purple eyes seeming to look right through Zoe. "Have you considered a career in galactic diplomacy?" Zoe felt a thrill of excitement at the question. "I've been thinking about it," she admitted. "It seems like such important work, especially now." Zara nodded. "It is indeed. In fact, we are preparing a program to train human diplomats for eventual participation in galactic affairs. Would you be interested in being part of the first cohort?" Zoe's heart raced at the opportunity. This was beyond anything she had ever dreamed of. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Absolutely yes." As word spread about the new diplomatic program, Zoe found herself at the center of attention. Her classmates peppered her with questions about what she would be learning, while colony officials sought her out to discuss the implications of this new step in human-Lumina relations. Even her father seemed to have come around. "I'm proud of you, kiddo," he told her one evening. "You're going to be part of shaping humanity's future out there among the stars." As the date approached for the program to begin, Zoe felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. She would be one of only a handful of humans in the first cohort, working alongside young Lumina and representatives from other alien species. The night before the program was set to start, Zoe stood at the window of her family's quarters, looking out at the Martian landscape. The atmospheric processors had made significant progress. She could now see stars twinkling in a sky that was more blue than red. She thought about how far they had come since those first difficult days on Mars. They had faced countless challenges, adapted to an alien world, and now stood on the brink of becoming a true spacefaring civilization. Whatever the future held, whether it was peaceful exploration or confrontation with the Vorax, Zoe knew that humanity would face it with the same resilience and determination that had brought them to Mars in the first place. As she turned away from the window, ready to face the new challenges that awaited her, Zoe felt a sense of purpose and excitement. The universe was vast and full of wonders, and humanity was finally ready to take its place among the stars. The next morning, as Zoe prepared to leave for her first day of diplomatic training, she paused to hug her family goodbye. Her mother's eyes were misty with pride, while her father gave her a reassuring squeeze. "Remember," he said, "no matter how far you go or how much you learn, you'll always be our little girl from Mars." Zoe smiled, touched by his words. "I know, Dad, and I'll never forget where I came from or how we got here." With a final wave, she stepped out into the Martian morning. The sun was rising over the horizon, casting a golden glow across the transformed landscape. In the distance, she could see the gleaming spires of the new diplomatic center where she would be training. As she walked, Zoe's mind raced with possibilities. What new wonders would she discover? What challenges would she face? How would her experiences shape the future of human-alien relations? She didn't have all the answers yet, but she was eager to find out. With each step, she was moving not just towards her own future, but towards humanity's destiny among the stars. As Zoe approached the diplomatic center, she saw other young humans and aliens gathering, all looking as nervous and excited as she felt. This was at the beginning of a new chapter, not just for her, but for all of humanity. Taking a deep breath, Zoe stepped forward to meet her fellow trainees. Whatever the future held, she was ready to face it head-on, carrying with her the hopes and dreams of Mars, of Earth, and of all humanity. The story of humanity's journey to the stars was just beginning, and Zoe was thrilled to be a part of it. As she entered the building, ready to start her training, she couldn't help but smile. The future was bright, and it was waiting for them among the stars.